The dancing plague. Imagine you are standing in France. The year is 1518, long before electricity, long before modern medicine, long before anyone understood the human mind. You walk through the twisting streets of Strasbourg, the sun burning softly through the mist. Women carry baskets of bread, children run barefoot along uneven stones. Blacksmiths hammer steel in dark workshops. Priests chant in echoing corners of ancient churches. The world feels heavy, not just because of poverty and hunger, but because people can almost feel God's anger in the air. Famine has starved the city. Disease lingers in the shadows. Taxes crush the poor. Everywhere you turn, you see fear in people's eyes, as if they are waiting for something terrible to happen, and then it does. You turn onto a narrow street, and you see a woman. Her hands tremble. Her eyes stare blankly into the void, and without warning, she begins to dance violently, erratically, as if invisible hands are pulling her strings. You step back in confusion. The people around you whisper. Some laugh uncomfortably, thinking it's a joke. Others make the sign of the cross. You watch, unsure, frozen, when suddenly another person moves beside her. Then another. A man clutching his chest begins swaying uncontrollably. A teenage girl joins in with a broken, twisted rhythm. Within minutes, the narrow street erupts into chaotic movement. And you stand there, helpless, because you have no idea that you are witnessing the beginning of one of the strangest and darkest events in human history. The dancing plague of 1518. The first dancer. Her name was Frau Troffea. History does not tell us much about her. Only that one morning in July, she left her home and began dancing without music, without purpose, without control. People tried to speak to her. Some tried to hold her arms still, but she broke free with unnatural strength. She danced through noon. She danced into the evening. She danced past midnight. By sunrise the next day, her feet were bleeding, her clothes torn, her body trembling from exhaustion. Neighbors tried to lay her down, but even in sleep, her legs twitched, as if trying to keep dancing. On the third day, she woke up and continued. Word spread rapidly. The woman who cannot stop moving. The cursed one. The possessed dancer. But the real horror came when the dancing spread. An outbreak of movement. Within a week, dozens joined Frau Troffea. No one knew why. Some witnesses said the dancers looked terrified, their arms flailing like they were trying to push something away. Others said their eyes were empty, like their souls had stepped out of their bodies. Some tried to scream for help, but couldn't control their own mouths. The dancing became a pattern of agony. Collapse, rest, rise, dance again, over and over. Heat scorched the city. Bodies dehydrated. Skin burned. Yet the movement continued. By the second week, 100 people were dancing. By the third week, 200. Soon, more than 400 people stormed the streets in a frenzy of unstoppable motion. Imagine the entire city square filled with bodies twisting, shaking, stumbling, collapsing, and rising again. A river of motion. No one could stop. Witness accounts from the time describe a scene like hell. They moved as if in a fire, yet no flame touched them. Their feet tore open, yet they did not stop bleeding. Some cried out that the devil himself was dragging them. This wasn't dancing, this was torment. Death in every step. The dancing turned deadly. People began collapsing, their hearts giving out under the brutal strain. Some danced until their lungs failed. Some until their legs snapped beneath their own weight. Others fell mid-step, dead before they hit the ground. Mothers danced while their children tugged at their skirts, crying. Old men danced until they died on their feet. Young boys joined unknowingly, smiling at first, until their smiles twisted into terror. Bodies lined the streets. Heat accelerated the deaths. The smell of sweat, blood, and fear filled the entire city. And yet, the dancing continued. It was as if the plague had become a creature of its own, feeding on human suffering, refusing to stop until the city was emptied of life. The authorities' fatal decision. Desperate to regain control, the city council consulted physicians. But 16th century doctors were guided by superstition, not science. They believed the dancers suffered from something called hot blood, a boiling of emotions, a fever of the soul, and their prescription was disastrous. They recommended more dancing, to let the demons burn out, to let the blood cool itself through movement. The city built a stage. They hired drummers. They brought in musicians. They even hired professional dancers. Day and night, music thundered through Strasbourg, and the plague answered. Every beat of the drum called more victims into the frenzy. Every note of the flute breathed life into the madness. Every chord added more bodies to the writhing sea of dancers. The officials had thrown fuel onto a burning fire. The religious panic. When the city realized it had made things worse, fear turned to religion. People whispered that the dancers were cursed by Saint Vitus, the patron saint associated with spasms and dance-like convulsions. The church believed the dancers had offended the saint. The cure? Repent, suffer, beg for mercy. The dancers were taken to a mountain shrine. Their shoes were removed. Their torn feet were washed in holy water. Prayers were chanted for hours. Slowly, the movement began to fade. Some collapsed into deep sleep. Others wept uncontrollably. Some were so traumatized they could no longer walk. Bit by bit, the city fell silent again. Theories of truth. What truly caused the dancing plague of 1518? Historians still argue to this day. Theory 1, ergot poisoning. A fungus on bread that creates LSD-like hallucinations. It causes spasms, twitching, and madness. But it doesn't explain why only some people were affected, or why the dancing happened in waves. Theory 2, mass hysteria. The people of Strasbourg were suffering beyond imagination. Famine, disease, starvation, guilt, fear, faith, trauma. When one person broke mentally, others followed like ripples in a pond. The mind is powerful. Powerful enough to make the body obey, even terrifying illusions. Theory 3, religious trance. Fear of divine punishment can create a psychological chain reaction. People believed Saint Vitus could curse them, so their minds and bodies responded accordingly. But the truth? None of these theories fully explain what happened. The dancing plague sits at the crossroads of biology, psychology, religion, and mystery. And perhaps that's why it still haunts us. Aftermath and legacy. When the dancing finally stopped, Strasbourg was not the same. Many survivors walked with permanent injuries. Some developed severe psychological disorders. Some feared music for the rest of their lives. Some never spoke again. For years afterward, dancing was banned. Even weddings had no celebration. The city feared that the sound of music itself could awaken the curse once more. Though centuries have passed, one truth remains. Humans are more fragile and more mysterious than we ever imagine. And the summer of 1518 reminds us of something terrifying. Sometimes the mind can become its own plague. The dancing plague of 1518. A mystery still unsolved. A tragedy still unforgettable. And a reminder that sometimes the scariest things are the ones we cannot explain. Conclusion. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of the most haunting mysteries in human history. A moment when an entire city lost control of its own body, its own mind, and perhaps even its own faith. For weeks, the people of Strasbourg were trapped inside a nightmare of movement, their limbs jerking in agony, their hearts racing toward exhaustion, their souls torn between fear and desperation. Whether it was caused by poisoned bread, collective hysteria, religious terror, or a perfect storm of suffering. The truth is that we still don't fully understand what happened. And maybe that's what makes this tragedy so unforgettable. The dancing plague is not just a story about uncontrollable dancing. It's a story about the human condition. It shows how fragile we become when fear, faith, hunger, and hopelessness collide. It reveals how quickly the mind can slip beyond reason, how the body can betray us, and how entire communities can fall into the same darkness together. 5 centuries later, the steps of that deadly dance have long faded, but its echoes still linger, reminding us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered.